Welcome to America's Mayor Live. Yep, live. Live and with plenty to discuss, talk about, reason together about, and keep us on the road to changing all this and reversing the horrible course that Biden and his cohorts have put us on. I don't know where to start, and I'm not going to do it in any kind of logical order. I'm just going to just throw them out there, and then we'll see what kind of questions they engender from you, and what kind of stuff Ted gets on his magic machine over there. So the first thing, we're going to have a very special guest, which I will tell you about very shortly. We'll get these news items on the way. John McGillian wrote an excellent piece that got too short coverage. This should be on the front page of the New York Communist Times. See the headline? Trans genocide is a complete myth. Like the idea that those of us who are, I don't know what the right word would be. I would have said normal, but there'd be a big picket if we did that. Those of us who are binary, and we don't believe in binary because binary is not a religion. Binary is part of science. So we know that the humans are binary. Okay. So there is this theory that that the transgender community is under unfair attack. And then, of course, there's no focus at all on some of the transgender people who become violent. Remember, just until a short while ago, it was described as a mental illness. And we know they kind of cover them up and kind of pretend. Once they find out the person's transgender, the murder or the attack kind of disappears. It disappears. We don't know much about it, or we're not gonna let the memoranda out. But here's why. So, I mean, the best place to go, and it's about the only thing left. No, I shouldn't say that. There are two things left with the FBI that are really worth saving. The vast majority of agents, who are wonderful people, including the ones who raided my house, who were wonderful people. They were working for, I'm not sure if there's certain words that I can use. They were working for traitors, but they were very, very embarrassed about what they had to do. So there are a lot of good people in all of these agencies and all of these places. But here are the statistics from the FBI. And there's no reason not to credit these statistics that come from all over the country. So in 2020, let's just go back to 2020. There were 266 hate crimes against transgender people. And altogether, 44 murders of transgender people. That's a 2.66 per 100,000. You know what the murder rate was for people that were heterosexual? And it was 3 times that, 6.52 people per 100,000. And that's going to be true of things like hate crime attacks. And I'm not just talking about gross numbers. I'm talking about per capita numbers. I mean, there's no comparison, for example, between anti-Semitism and being attacked because you're transgender. I mean, one hardly ever happens, being attacked because you're transgender, and the other happens more than any other particular hate crime. And then Asian Americans last year had more attacks than anti-Semitic attacks. This year, anti-Semitic attacks are higher. Transgender doesn't even figure in the top 10. So to say that the transgender community is unfairly or excessively attacked is just not true. Are they unfairly attacked? Any attack against a transgender person is unfair and should be condemned and should be prosecuted. But when you're trying to figure out national priorities for the use of rare law enforcement resources at a time in which America is having a crime epidemic, you've got to be something that Biden has ripped America of completely, and that's called honesty, because he's been a thoroughly dishonest man, from the first moment I met him 35 years ago, and it just gets worse. Also, there's the thought that the transgender community is underrepresented. Well, that's nuts when you watch television. It almost seems as if the transgender community must be about 3/4 of our population, given all the coverage that it gets. And of course, they're what are they, like less than 1%? Something like that. And then we get into things that, I'm sorry, they're just mind-boggling. How do you take a guy who is like 206 or 400 and something in swimming as a guy? In other words, he's a lousy swimmer. He makes believe he's a girl, doesn't even bother to do much of a job in doing that. Even talks about how much fun it is for him to go into the girls' bathroom. And he becomes number one immediately. Now, forget the gender stuff about this and everything. It's not just plain cheating. It's not just plain being a fraud. I don't know. And that's the reason why this country is in such turmoil. These are very, very, these are very big differences, and they're very sensitive issues. Human sexuality is, one of the most sensitive issues we could be talking about. But to talk about it in this way seems to be an attempt to pervert the entire society. That's the way I think people look at this whole effort in our schools to get children to question at way too early an age their gender. Now, if you're educated on Marxism like I am, you see the connection. I don't think a lot of people have seen the connection up until now. But what has been going on in our schools has been going on for 100 years. And it's had ups and it's had downs. But now it's really, really going full speed into the station of communism, socialism. And they're going to have their wish pretty soon, which is Marx and Stalin and Hitler shared in common the idea that you should get a kid around 2 years old and take him away from the parents, because all the parents do is screw him up. Well, they're working on it, aren't they? Aren't they? Joe would like that. Well, if Joe knows what he would like. Where's Hunter Biden? Equal protection under the law. If you committed murder and I committed murder, we'd get treated roughly the same depending on our circumstance. Maybe yours was justified and mine not. But if they both were unjustified, we would both be punished equivalent way. And just because you were the son of the president or vice president and you weren't going to go scot-free. That happens in a dictatorship, doesn't it? That happens in, maybe we won't go as far as dictatorship. That happens in a fascist country. I'm glad to see they're focusing on Blinken, because I knew this Blinken thing from 4 years ago. It was the first indication that the government was going to fix the Burisma case when Blinken, and this is on the hard drive, and I know there's so much in it, it's hard to get it all out. And Ron knows this really well, Ron Johnson. The meetings between the Deputy Secretary of State Blinken and the son of the Vice President over Burisma were all done off the record. And in the penultimate meeting, before they set up a meeting for a Burisma figure with the Deputy Secretary of State, they were afraid that people would see Hunter in the State Department. They had thought of meeting outside, but that was worse. They actually brought him in the service entrance with a hat over his head. And if you'd like to get all the text on that, you can go back to like my 4th or 5th podcast where I described that. I described that 3 years ago, and they're still working on it. But I mean, when you look at those texts, you've got pretty much a straight out violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which I don't think much of, as you know, but they sure as heck use it against Republicans. I'll give you another one that has been discovered, rediscovered, and then expanded, and that is the suspicious activities report. What is that? So a suspicious activity report is usually put in by an IRS agent or a Treasury agent or a bank, and it usually means suspicion of money laundering. Um, you've got to report transactions of $10,000 or more. So sometimes people will split up and they'll do $9,000 transactions. That usually merits a suspicious activity report. Believe it or not, it's the thing that got Governor Spitzer caught going to Washington with his high-level escorts on the train, because he had run up a big bill with them of about 40 grand, and he didn't want to pay it by check or credit card. So he went and he started breaking down $10,000 bills, and the teller thought he was involved in drugs and reported it to the FBI. And then the rest is history. They caught him having sex with these prostitutes for years. The most notable thing is that you should know that Spitzer wears socks when he has sex. Remember? It was part of the report. That's how they knew him. And they used to pass the information around. You're going to get the jerk with the socks. And he is a jerk. I mean, I know he was the governor, but I knew him before he was a governor, when he was a prosecutor. And like Weiner, I always thought they were weirdos. When Weiner got caught, I was asked by the press in Los Angeles, Congressman Weiner has been caught. You know him since he was a young man. He was in the city council. He worked for Schumer. What do you think? What do you think? You know what my answer was? This is one of my best answers ever. I said, I expected far worse. I always expected he would be like a serial killer or something like that. When you look in his eyes, I mean, weird dude. Really weird dude. And now he's on ABC with me, which is good. I mean, he has a First Amendment right, not to send around those pictures, but I mean to talk. You want to know how bad it is in New York? Don't rely on the politicians, and don't rely on the political propaganda. Just rely on the fact that everybody's leaving. They're just leaving. And the people who are leaving are people who pay taxes. And they're leaving in pretty close to record numbers. In 2021, it was 105,000 people, and they took they took 10.9 billion in adjusted gross income with them, and brought most of it to Florida, which is why DeSantis has a big smile on his face. Now, I'm going to say Florida, and also some of them stopped off in the Carolinas. Now, if you look at California, you see an equal exodus from California, but that generally went to the benefit of Texas, where they got a bump of about 8.9 billion in adjusted gross income taken right out of California. And Illinois, per capita, lost the most because it's a smaller state. And Illinois lost it to everybody. Florida. Is it their enormously high tax? Watch television, and now that loopy mayor is gone, they still have that fat pig Pritzker, who doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, showing up all the time and saying absolutely moronic things. This guy must have they must have run him for office like a lot of rich families do. They take the guy who can't read and write, and they run him for office because they don't want him in the family business, because God forbid he's in the family business, he might hurt people. But if he hurts us and gets us killed, well, that's okay. The last thing I'm going to cover in this portion of the show, because I don't have much to cover except the expectation, and that is the Epstein report. Here's pictures of the people they reveal so far. You don't even know any of their faces, which is why they've been revealed. But I mean, Clinton took 27 trips with him. 27 trips. That's a lot of trips. I mean, Epstein might have been fun to talk to, but I can't imagine 27 trips on his plane, right? To the island. We know what happened on the island, right? What do they call it? Pedophilia? Yeah. But I mean, it could be that Clinton just went along for the ride and stayed in the plane. Could be. Mm-hmm. It could be that Clinton, is such a disciplined guy that he would never be involved in having, illicit sex of any kind. That situation in the Oval Office was just an aberration in an otherwise pure life. Or it could be possible that he was a major pedophile. And don't you think we should know about that? And then how many others? How many others were harming children? What do we treat harming children now just like we treat other political garbage? What's happened to us? Whatever happened to us isn't good. It's also, by the way, on the list that I've been keeping for you for 3 years now. We started off with the podcast Express Train to Socialism, right? What do? We listed all the guideposts of how you get to become communist as outlined by a whole group of people and refined by Marx, by Engels, of course, by Lenin and Mao, Stalin, and then some modern Marxists. So when you see all these things happening and you wake up in the morning and you see that people seem to be fine with men racing against women or swimming against women and winning all the titles, and the women who strove all their lives to be champions, are completely cheated out of it. And a lot of people take it as normal. That's the product of indoctrination that's been going on in our schools for years, and then in the rest of our society. The battle that DeSantis is having with Disney is not over the fact that they criticized a bill. The practice he's having with them is they've made themselves into a little or a big pressure cooker for teaching young people, indoctrinating young people into the relativity of your gender or your sex. That's the side they're on. And that's pretty dangerous for kids. So, Ted, I think it might be a good time to take a short break, and we'll listen to our friend Kirk Elliott, right? And also tell people Kirk's going to be on this week, and Kirk is going to be on this week to help us not only with the whole situation of metals but also with the economy in general, which is kind of complicated. And Kirk has a very nice way of explaining it in a way that people can relate it to what they have to do to protect themselves. So I'm really looking forward to Kirk coming on. I think it'll be on Thursday, but we haven't set the date completely. But let's take a short break and listen to this. And geez, I'd give it a shot. I mean, I really would. I don't see why you don't try it. Okay. Faith and family, freedom and finance are 4 things that we would do anything to protect. I trust the team at Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors, with providing the advice and sound strategies to take advantage of the inflationary pressures, the high interest rates, and the international challenges we face today. The Kirk Elliott team, with over 29 years of experience, shares our values and believes in people over profit. They can help you protect your finances from the big government policies that are out of our control. So what's in our control? The decision to act or not to act is within our control. I encourage you to act. Call Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors today. Start working with a team that will help you protect your retirement assets with gold and silver while sharing your desire to protect your faith, family, and freedom. Call them today, 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900, and tell them Rudy sent you. or simply fill out a request for a free consultation at kirkelliottphd.com/Rudy.
Yeah, that's where I live now. Yep.
Is that where you grew up?
I was born in Red Bank, New Jersey. Grew up in Louisville. Let's just say, and then I moved on.
Oh,
Red Bank, though, not too far.
so we share in common the fact that I lived in Kentucky for 3 years.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Back and forth between Lexington and Hazard.
Hazard.
Hazard, the famous Hazard.
We're back on, Mayor.
I was running a coal. Okay, welcome back to America's Mayor Live. You got back a little faster than America's Mayor was ready for you, which is not good. That would have been some kind of penalty of some sort. At some point, Ted is going to do double duty and figure out what the score of the Rangers and the Devils are, because it takes me back to 1954 when the Rangers won the Stanley Cup for the first time in 2,432 years. And I was the mayor, and we had our first big parade. And I got to drink out of the Stanley Cup. And Andrew tried to, but I stopped him, because Andrew could drink out of the Stanley Cup now. And he's a much bigger hockey fan than I am, because he played hockey, but I really enjoy it. And I love the Rangers. So I have as a guest with me, Nick Sortor. I met Nick. We met in New Palestine.
Yeah, we met in East Palestine. Why
do I call it New Palestine? East Palestine, right?
Yeah. Well, we want to renew the town, so I mean, yeah. So New Palestine's fine as well.
And you were there and you describe yourself as a citizen journalist, which I think is wonderful. I like the idea of citizen politicians too. And also, you describe yourself as the Twitter guy. I mean, you get him at Nick Sortor, SORTOR, SORTOR. So, tell us about. First, tell us about your impressions of New Palestine, because the whole like ignoring of it was so much why Trump got elected.
Right.
And if he does get elected again, why he's going to get elected again. It was like watching it play out in real time.
Right.
Because they really hate these people.
Well, yeah. So that was one of the things that Trump did when he was running in 2016. He was able to capture these. He reached out to these people, right? Because we're talking about small town America here. This is what a lot of people would call flyover country. It's
that's been some time. People have felt that way, but it wasn't until he came on that somebody crystallized it.
Right.
And we all knew, flyover country has been out there like 20. Remember, there's that map where there's a big New York. And a big California, and then there's a little teeny country in the middle.
Right.
And it was flyover country.
Yeah.
But nobody bothered to try to represent those people.
Right. But so the founders of our country here, our founding fathers, actually implemented the Electoral College to make sure that these people weren't forgotten. And it seems like we have one party here that is trying to back away from that entire system to push these people out because it doesn't benefit them. But when Donald Trump went let me go back a little bit. When I went to East Palestine, I put out a tweet that said, should I go there because the media is not covering it? And I know that this is a big problem, right? It could be potentially dangerous. There could be lives at stake here. So I went, I started tweeting about it. And then Tucker Carlson called me. We went on the show and we made Tucker Carlson.
Oh, isn't he gone?
Yeah, no, I heard. Yeah,
Fox doesn't allow you. If we say Tucker
no free
Carlson,
speech on Fox anymore.
What happens? Does Fox try to get us arrested or something? What happens? Is there a Fox police now?
Oh yeah, you gotta be careful with that name. Right?
Yeah,
I laugh, but it's sad.
I've been banned from Fox for 2 years, and without me, Fox would never have been on in New York. I mean, they owe me some portion of their life, which they repay with total disloyalty.
Well, obviously, I probably shouldn't say this on air, but I mean, Rupert Murdoch has shown who he is.
Well, how about they've done 2 years in a row now of September 11 programming, and they don't have me on.
America's Mayor.
Yeah, and they have on the people that work for me, who say wonderful things about me, and they try to cut it off.
You brought Republicans and Democrats together on September 11th of 2001, right? It stopped being a partisan issue because you were leading that.
Well, whatever their agenda is, making money, political, sucking up to whoever, to keep me out of September 11 is kind of like changing history. Just change history. So they put on somebody who works for me who answered, well, I don't really know the mayor. Mayor Giuliani was really running it. And they were all embarrassed. Or every once in a while, one of their people who don't know they're supposed to say nice things about me say, oh my goodness, Mayor Giuliani brought crime down more than anyone. He's the person who should be advising Adams. And then you'll see the regular Fox person go, oh, time for a break. Time for a break. Funny station. You know when I realized they were really off? There was a session, I think it was the 5, I'm not sure. No, it wasn't the 5, it was the daytime show. It was that midday show. And Newt Gingrich went after Soros big time about how much he hates America, how much he's written about American nationalism being so terrible, and then how he was. And it was a little earlier when he was starting to put all those DAs in to subvert our justice system and destroy it. Well, all of a sudden, one of the women on there goes, you can't say that. You can't say that. People are defame him. It's anti-Semitic. And then all of a sudden, they just cut it off. Boom. They cut off the segment, like unprofessionally. And then we came back, and there was no more mention of Soros.
Right.
So Soros used to use this thing where if you said anything about him, he would accuse you of being anti-Semitic.
They still use that line. I know they do.
Well, you know my answer to it? I'm a better Jew than he is. And
then it's a lot harder to hit you.
And I will not explain why unless they challenge me. If they challenge me, I'll explain why. And we'll blow him right out of the water because the guy's got a background that's disgraceful.
They're paying a lot of people on Twitter even to talk about this and use the Holocaust thing, like he's a Holocaust survivor or whatever
not.
too.
Yes, he is a Holocaust survivor. He was his father changed his religion, put him in an Italian household, and he pretended to be Christian. Okay, fine. But then he also turned in his Jewish classmates and friends to the Nazis and admitted that on 60 Minutes. And when asked if he had any guilt about it, said no.
And this is correct.
So what kind of Holocaust? He's a Holocaust survivor. Who knows how many other people died so he could be a Holocaust? Right. Who knows how many Jews he turned in order to remain a Holocaust survivor? So
people don't realize how important this is about and how much this has damaged the United States by putting in these DAs. I mean, look what's going on with Trump right now here. This is Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA here, was pretty much selected by George Soros.
Completely.
And now look what's happening. They're now prosecuting and I have spoken with liberal prosecutors here from the Southern District of New York that work here that have told me that this is the equivalent of a parking ticket, that these are Mickey Mouse charges, and they would never take these against anybody else, and that this is totally politically motivated.
You know how many non-disclosure agreements there are probably in existence, hidden away in safes and whatever.
Right. Well, Congress has a fund to pay hush money to people that are making
100,000 or something.
There's nothing wrong with an NDA.
No, an NDA is a contract.
I have NDAs. Prosecute me.
Yeah, I can't tell you. I do too, and I can't tell you how many I negotiated at the conclusion of a litigation, to ward off litigation, or even just as a business, as part of a business deal when you acquire sensitive information or embarrassing information. And these were two adults, both of whom were highly sophisticated. He was a highly sophisticated businessman, and she was a highly sophisticated business woman.
Porn star. I mean, I don't want to call her a porn star because she wasn't a star, sir. She was not a star.
The only thing we can say about her was she was not exactly she wasn't exactly a naive, poor little innocent maiden. Let's say that.
Yeah.
No, she was in the business for money, and that's what she was looking for. She was looking for 130,000 at a time in which she thought he was vulnerable, both with regard not only to the election but his wife and kid, and that happens a lot. And then men, even who are innocent, feel that it's better to keep it, and particularly if they have a lot of money and it doesn't mean anything. I mean, I'm involved in a situation now where somebody got $1 million to keep quiet about probably a falsely alleged rape.
Mhm.
So the woman goes out on a date with the man. The man is the son of an extraordinarily wealthy man, and they end up in, I guess, his apartment. And I don't know how much is absolutely true. They either have or don't have sex. But then she later claims he raped her. She never went to the police, never got a rape kit.
Mhm.
And then to make it go away, they gave her $1 million.
Right. Because sometimes it makes
Because
more
because
sense.
the family's worth like 20 billion, 30
Right.
billion. And with regard to this particular son, they had other issues and they didn't need him in the news fighting this case out. So for $1 million, and this gave her a really bad habit of doing it to other people and doing it to an ex-boyfriend and trying to get money out of him and claiming he raped her. There are people like this.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll tell you this: like, what was it, $100 and something thousand dollars? That
130.
$130,000. Okay, let's say I'm a multi-billionaire. Okay, why would I not? There is an analysis that you make here. Is it worth it, right? To, if somebody accuses you of something, even if you didn't do it, people pay hush money all the time, right? Because there's not, I might lose $10 million by letting this stuff, end up hitting the media.
100%, Nick.
Because,
And give you another perspective on this. It's really interesting. I knew it didn't happen because if it had happened, he would have to have paid a lot more. People think, well, 130,000, that's a lot. Not in that level. So you look at the Fox settlements that got Fox in trouble. There isn't one for less than $1 million.
Right.
I mean, they're settling for 10 million, 12 million, 5 million, 8 million. Those are cases that have something to them that the person is worried will get litigated. At his level of society and that kind of non-disclosure agreement, this is nuisance money, 130,000.
Right.
I mean, if a real claim would have been 2, 3, 4, 5 million.
Right. And what's funny is I believe that Stormy Daniels actually owes President Trump 300 and something, maybe 400.
Yeah, she owes him
$1,000.
more than she would be awarded should she win the case.
Right.
It'll be a deduction from the 380 she owes him for having made false claims about him, which makes the whole case ridiculous, and the judge entertaining it completely suspect.
Right.
And also remember, I would like people to know how that judge got his job. That judge did not get his job in some neutral. That judge got his job because he was selected by the Democratic leader of Manhattan to run. And when you get selected to run as a Democrat on the ticket for judge, 999 times out of 1,000, you get elected. The election is a joke. It means nothing. Everybody votes for the Democrat. And that's been true for 50 years. Mm-hmm. So where does he owe his job? He owes his job to politics, not to any kind of merit.
Right.
He owes his job to the Democratic county leader who in times past, I'm not saying they did it in his case, they still do it in some. Who knows? Maybe they did. They require contributions to the party. Sometimes they even require cash for themselves. Because sometimes these county leaders, gosh almighty, sometimes they're crooked.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at it right now, the judge in the Trump case that we're looking at, he's his daughter, I believe, worked for the Biden campaign, and he's actually on record as donating to Biden's presidential campaign.
One would think an honest judge
would recuse himself.
But one that owes the Democrat Party, loyal service, because he was selected. He wasn't selected by the people to be a judge. He was selected by the Democrat Party to be a judge. It is a fiction to think that the judges selected in New York are selected by the people. They are selected by the leader of that party in that county. And here's how it happens to be uncontested. There are no Republicans in New York. So the minute you name a Democrat and put them on the ticket, except for a very strange situation, they're elected. Mm-hmm. So it's an appointed position. And it's appointed by a level of the political hierarchy that has notoriously been corrupt. The county leader positions. one of my most famous cases was prosecuting the two biggest ones and convicting one, and one committed suicide during the investigation. And to think that New York City isn't a corrupt city is to not be able to do arithmetic. New York City has a budget of over $100 billion, and it's more than the budget of the entire state of Florida, which has 12 million more people.
And this has gone so far downhill since you were mayor. I mean,
that
it's
money
been
has to be stolen. I mean, or how about we take New York State? New York State has not quite 2.5 times the budget of Florida. Florida has 3 million more people, or 2 million more people. So how does it end up that things cost New York City twice as much as they cost Florida? Because there's a much bigger kickback scheme going on in there.
Right. And it's getting worse, sir.
So tell me what you've learned in your pursuits as a citizen journalist, and how where we can find you and how we can keep up with you.
Yeah. So the interesting part about it is this has not been what I've done in the past. Like I'm by trade, I'm a software engineer. And I ended up getting into this a few months back because it was.
Okay, so you're a software engineer. Tell people briefly what does a software engineer do?
So I used to build,
fix up all these things for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to build technologies for various Fortune 500 companies,
Right.
like internal programs a lot of times, and we used to do externally. We used to do things for actually a lot of senators and on both sides of the aisle actually, and donation systems and such.
It's not partisan.
Yeah, and so
We both need it.
Right, absolutely. They both need it, and that's where the business was. So I came out of that. I ended up on Twitter right after Elon Musk had actually purchased it, because this is what I always wanted to do.
You ended up on Twitter? You decided to open an account? You hadn't had
So
one?
I actually had an account, but I didn't do anything like what I'm doing now because
Under the old regime.
I was going to get banned. Yeah.
Oh, you knew you'd be banned.
I knew I'd be banned under the old regime.
Like I used to. Right.
Yeah. So I ended up starting, and I went to East Palestine on there. I started speaking on Mario Nafel's show, the Twitter Space.
Right.
You've been on there. We've been on. Yeah.
Quite popular.
And so I was like, I tweeted out to my followers one time, is that okay? East Palestine is nobody is paying attention to East Palestine. It's been a couple of weeks now. Nobody's been there. The president, neither U.S. senator had been there. And so, I went and I said, should I go and bring attention to this?
The president not only wasn't there, he never mentioned it.
He never mentioned it. He won't talk about it. He actually did promise to go, but now he won't mention it now because
Well, if he promised to go, given Joe Biden's history, he won't go because he never tells the truth.
He probably forgot, actually. I don't know if he didn't tell the truth.
That is
or
true.
He forgot.
You're correct. When I knew him, he never told the truth. Now I don't think he knows what the hell he's talking about.
Right.
How about that situation a couple of days ago where the kid says to him, "Where's the last country you went to?"
He didn't know.
He was back from Ireland 4 days ago.
Yep.
He's probably still feeling the effects of it.
Yeah. So the child asks he asks the question. He's like, "Oh yeah, well I went to where was the last time I went?" And you hear some small kid,
China.
Yeah.
China.
Probably. But
quite possible that might
could have been
refresh his recollection. He might have started fighting with the kid.
Right.
You never know.
Yeah. And it was crazy to think about is because this was supposed to be a major trip, right? There was a lot of media fanfare around it and such, and he couldn't remember that. And I think that was very telling when you have a 3-year-old in the crowd screaming at you where you last were. You're the president of the United States.
I should not be laughing. I feel very bad when he does these things that I laugh because they are inherently funny, except for the fact that his finger is right near the button, right near the little button that you can press. Now there are fail safes on that, but it's not very comfortable having a demented man as president.
Right. Especially when you don't know who is controlling the government. We don't know who is pulling the strings in the back. It's
all
not
we can do is speculate that it's Obama I was surprised to see Susan Rice leave. Ted, were you surprised to see that? Ted's been remarkably quiet today. You think he's planning a coup?
He's the one that's pulling the strings in the background.
You may not. He's been on a couple of times, and he may have really. He was on the other night, did a great job replacing me because I actually was at a meeting with President Trump, but he may have really kind of liked it, and now we got him plotting a coup. It could be tomorrow night. You won't see me in this spot. That's what I'm saying. It's like Tucker. And
Well, of course, we
just in
met-
case, I've had a good time with this. We've had a wonderful time. We love each other. I will find a way back somewhere. But you know, Ted may be in this spot because he's been very, very quiet.
No, well, we
all
met-
kinds of you would know what he's doing, but he's pressing all kinds of buttons.
We've got all these buttons. all these
He's
new
amazing.
Cameras. We got our getter.
Can they see? Can they see you?
They can. They can.
Well, why don't we show them to you? So if you try to run away, we can identify you.
Well, we want to keep. We'll do that in a second here.
Oh, I know that. I know that. We'll
We'll
do it in
I
a
bet.
second. We'll do it in a second. We'll do it in a
I
second.
want to talk about me.
The
and
lighting
Rick.
is bad, so we'll watch you with bad lighting. So what?
and
Actually,
so
that's good. All right.
okay. Well, we'll
Wait.
add-
I think I have something. I can put some light on you. Hold it.
Hold on.
Got a phone flashlight? What do you got?
You have no idea how.
There you go.
There you go. Come on.
All right, we got it coming. We're gonna
Come
put
on,
it on here.
Ted. Look at here. I got it right here.
We're
Hey,
adding a camera.
you can see it right there.
We're adding it.
There you go.
There you go.
Beautiful. Perfect.
Oh, look at that. Look at the color.
This is the mayor.
Look at the
wanting-
color. Oh, now he put
wanting to
something
bring
off.
down
here.
ratings here. No,
Ratings. Forget about the ratings.
we're adding a camera.
But we're adding a camera. But I thought we had a camera.
Yeah, right here.
What have we been doing all day yesterday? We were getting a camera.
Yeah, we got it. We got 2 new cameras.
And what is it? What are they
Now
just
our
doing?
phones go. There's
Now
a
it's-
lot going on here. We're gonna add our
What are the
camera.
2 cameras doing if they're not taking pictures?
They are taking live video.
This
Right
man,
here, right here. You
This
see
man
that?
is doing 5,600 things in the background. So like, I just
That's
want
a
to say
bit
for
of
the
a-
audience, like this guy deserves a
That's
ton
a-
of credit.
That's a bit of an exaggeration. He's doing
It's tough to do now.
shot.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Why?
perfect.
May I ask why the Empire State Building came in the middle of Nick and I and you? Uh-oh.
That is our current background.
Today, Mayor Adams is celebrating.
Have you seen the bulletproof panels they're putting on the side of the NYPD police cars now?
No, but it's.
Did they need those when you were mayor? Or, did I miss something? I
No,
don't-
no. He loves. I mean, he loves this technology stuff. Like he's going to put things on cars so you can find them. And I have no desire to stop him from technology, but it's like football. It's blocking and tackling that wins the game.
Mhm.
It's getting the criminals that are out on the street inside a place where they can't jump on you, beat you, kill you, throw you on the subway tracks. So I would say, Nick, from the time I was mayor, and I can go into the Bloomberg Kelly era, there are probably anywhere from 7 to 8 to 9,000 people walking the streets who are career criminals that should be in prison if they hadn't changed the law, or if they would change it back to what it should be and people could be held.
It's a revolving door. That's what it is now.
Yeah,
you go in and
with
you go
just a
out.
brief interruption for their stealing cars,
Mhm.
breaking into houses, beating
It's a
people up.
mild inconvenience at this point.
Yeah,
Right.
you- well, you don't want to interrupt their money making. You know, they have to make money.
But these people know the criminal justice system better than the prosecutors do at this point because they've been in and out so many times. They know how to manipulate it and they know how to make it beneficial for them. Like, okay, yeah, if they get arrested, they know how to work it, and that is crazy to me.
100%. So, Nick, where? Tell me where you grew up.
Yeah.
'Cause
So
people,
I was
people
born.
are always interested in the personal.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born in Red Bank, New Jersey, not too far from here. I don't know. Maybe you've heard about it, Mr.
On
Mayor.
the way
It's-
to Atlantic City.
That's it. On the way to Atlantic City. decided that things were going south in New Jersey. It
Mhm.
started being taken over
Like
by
New
the
York.
left.
Like New York.
Yeah, exactly. So they sought refuge down in Kentucky, down in Louisville, Kentucky. Unfortunately, Louisville has gone south since then. I don't know where to escape to at this point, so I'm trying Lexington, Kentucky.
Lexington's
And I
beautiful.
think Florida or Texas is going to be next.
I
sir.
lived
I
in
don't know.
Lexington and I enjoyed Lexington. I mean, Lexington is a little difficult because it is a small city. It's very much like a small city. But if you like horse racing and you like horses, they've got that great track there.
Keeneland.
Keeneland, right? Didn't they have this weekend is Derby?
Churchill Downs. Yep.
So last weekend they had the final races at Keeneland.
Mhm.
So now what I lived in Kentucky on and off for 3 years. This week is like Mardi Gras.
Oh yeah, this is Derby week. This
Parties
is
all over on the way from Louisville to on the way from Lexington to Louisville because the horse meet is moving from one to the other.
Yeah. So this is like the second most viewed sporting event in the United States is the Kentucky Derby.
Really?
Yeah,
I know it
absolutely.
used to
Right,
be-
right behind the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it used to be before there was a Super Bowl that it was the number one.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's gone down a bit though. It's got, it's amazing. Racing has gone down a lot, but not the Derby. The Derby remains.
The Derby remains. The amount of people that go there. The President Trump was there last year, actually, and he made an appearance on the balcony. You could see him waving on camera.
I
and
remember.
such.
I was thinking of going with him. I've only been to the Derby once, and it was a very rainy day, and I never really got the full appreciation of it. You were slogging around in the mud, and
Yeah,
then of course I lost my main bet.
makes a huge difference. Oh yeah, that hurts, doesn't it? That's why you drink those mint juleps and maybe some scotch. That'll that heals those wounds pretty quickly.
For me, it's like it isn't so. I don't bet sufficient amounts of money so that it would hurt that way. It hurts my pride.
Your ego. I have an ego when it comes to betting. You know,
like I can't pick the right horse.
right? It's like, what's wrong with
And
you?
you did. You got the right. You got the right horse.
Yeah.
I didn't get the right horse.
You're not better than me. Stop acting. You know? I swear I was going to pick that horse. You know.
So what's the big anything on the Rangers and the the Devils?
Of course. So the Rangers and the Devils are playing Game 7, what they're calling the Battle of the Hudson. Right now, it is a 0-0 score with 30 seconds left in the first period.
Okay, so we got a lot of game to watch. The Battle of the Hudson. I mean, that was the battle that never took place between Washington and the English forces because Washington snuck out in the fog, and he had them thinking he was in Lower Manhattan, and he was actually up where about the George Washington Bridge is. And right before Christmas, he got all the boats and giving them a false information because they were ready to attack him in Manhattan because they had already driven him out of Brooklyn. He got our entire army across.
And that's one of there's so much history to the city. And that's what really hurts me is even somebody that's not a New Yorker is watching everything just implode.
Oh, well,
right. You know,
but
that's the saddest part about it.
that history is not correct. It was all about slavery. Yeah, slavery is the whole thing.
Yeah,
I don't think New York had slavery then. New York has always been an abolitionist state. You know, at the time that slavery first was recognized, there were always opponents. Slavery was never fully and universally accepted in this country. There were always large numbers of very, very strong abolitionists, even to the point of violence.
Even in the South, too. There were a lot of
The abolition movement was always there. And even with Jefferson, there's a moral tension in Jefferson that I think ultimately brought about the abolition of slavery, because although he has slaves and he kept slaves, he writes about how immoral it is. And he says it's going to be, I've forgotten the exact words, but it's going to be quite a day of reckoning when America has to pay the price for this. She's quite right about it. But I mean, the idea is these people were people of their times. They struggled to overcome the things that were done wrong during their times. They overcame some, they couldn't overcome others. Does that make them any difference than the people today that are criticizing them, who also do things that are wrong, who also act like hypocrites? I mean, what about the Democratic politicians who say, you know, you can't go out at night for dinner, we have quarantine, and then like Newsom, they go to the fanciest restaurants in town because they're important.
Yeah, absolutely. And his excuse for that was that I believe it was called the French Laundry, is what it was out there in California. Where
Was he getting his clothes cleaned?
Well, yeah, he definitely needs his dirty laundry cleaned. I'm telling you, this man has so much dirty laundry that it's crazy. And he's supposed to be the president in 20. That's who they're going to run. That's who the Democrats are going to run. They're not going to run Kamala. That was the original goal.
I once was told that Biden would be the president, and 14 hours later, when I stopped laughing, I had to recover. I had to go to the hospital to get special injections, and now he's the president.
Yeah.
But I met Joe in believe it or not, I can't remember if I met him in 77 or 81, because I think it was 81.
He's been in there for 87 years
but I knew about him in 77 because my friend, who I brought down to Washington to be one of the first lawyers on the FISA committee, went to law school with him. And at some point he came into my office and he said, Rudy, we were just talking. He said, you should run for the Senate in a place like Delaware.
1 second.
And I said, well, why would I run in Delaware? And he said, because it costs so much money in New York and it's so hard. In Delaware, anybody can win. I said, well, anybody can't win. He said, well, it must have been 70 something. He said, my law school classmate just won, and he's barely 30, or he's just becoming 30. And he was by far and without any doubt the dumbest guy in our law school class. Would you like to meet him? I said, well, why would you want to meet the dumbest guy in your law school class? He said, because he's going to be on the Judiciary Committee, and we got to get a lot of people through. We could use some Democratic friends. I said, well, that makes a lot of sense. And he said, I'll tell you another thing. You're going to like him. He may be dumb, but he's a good guy.
Right. Well,
he's a man's man. That's what he put it. He's a man's man. But boy, but then he would just have a little asides like, but boy, is he dumb. I said, well, how did he get through law school? Straight out, he tells me he cheated.
Yeah.
I said, how did he cheat? He said, well, he did the normal cheating and looking over other people's papers. But then he had to put in a report, and he plagiarized it. So they were going to throw him out, and he charmed the dean and his wife to give him another chance, and he plagiarized yet another paper. So then they finally gave him an oral exam, and he stayed in, and he finished right near the bottom of the class. So long before he got caught in all those lies, I knew his whole history. Like when he was saying, I have 5 degrees, and I'll match my IQ with yours. And I finished, I don't know if he's at the top 10% of my class, or the top 10, or number 1, or something like that. When it turns out he has, 2 degrees, not 5, which I'm sure somehow he paid for or something. Indeed, he was ranked rather interestingly in the class, about 4th from last, like way down, like 80 out of 86. Yeah, he almost did get thrown out and had to be sort of waved back in. All these things were untrue.
Yeah.
But I think he has a chip on his shoulder because he probably was always the little dummy. Joe the little dummy. I think he was left back in the 3rd grade. So he wants to pretend he's smart like everybody else.
Right. Well, he's telling people that he was the top of his class. He said that I think he said at one point he was a valedictorian of the class. That was proven false so quickly.
It's his lying.
He was a truck driver too. That's what he said.
His lying is so transparently false that it does indicate his weak intellect, right? So a smart person would be a good liar.
Right.
They would lie about something where you couldn't easily contradict him. They wouldn't say, for example, I was the valedictorian. And then you just go back and you see, oh, no, James Johnson was the valedictorian.
Yeah, look at the yearbook. That's it.
Or how about his uncle this is a recent one. His uncle got the Purple Heart. Well, we can't find anybody with his uncle's name getting the Purple Heart.
Yeah.
What you're making a
headphones.
Oh. I was like, I don't know what this guy is hand signaling me for.
I know baseball signals, but you got to agree. The purpose of signals, Ted, is we got to agree in advance. Notice how he doesn't ever use. I don't know why we got those other 2 cameras. I mean, I did it so we could put Ted on and put him
No,
on the spot.
I'll explain after. We have the other camera on. It's
What's wrong? We have a technical problem?
no, it's not technical. It's I want to do phone calls now.
Oh, that wasn't an answer.
Do we have an update on the balloon in the meantime? Because this is
Yeah, there was a balloon,
the mysterious
another
balloon.
up, and it's waiting for its Air Force escorts
You're
provided by
good,
Biden.
Mr. Mayor. You can put it on now.
They're waiting for their Air Force experts.
Brian, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Gotcha.
Hi, Brian. How are you? It's Rudy Giuliani,
man.
and I have
Honor and a privilege.
Nick with me.
Thank you. Thank you. Calling over here out of the West Coast, over here on California.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Where in California?
I'm up in the northern part, up in Stockton. just
Okay,
to the
Stockton,
east of
sure.
San Francisco. Yeah, just right south of Sacramento.
Is there a
So,
prison there, in Stockton?
well, we have a San Joaquin, just like a general prison right
okay.
there, but it's nothing like a super max or anything like that. So
All
we're
right.
kind of decent with that, but you definitely would tell that we did not have a problem out here, with
So
everything
what's
that's
going
I
on?
think
What's going on
the
in
homeless and the
Newsomville?
fentanyl and everything else. Mr. Batman over there thinking he could just go talk about everything that doesn't make any sense. And blame
Who is that,
everybody else for the
Biden
problem
or
that he's
Newsom?
creating. Both of them. They just deflect on everything they do.
Yeah, but Newsom
so-
isn't mentally deranged. Biden is missing. No, Biden is missing definite brain cells.
That's true, but I think Newsom, in his sense of wanting to be Batman, the way he talks, he comes off like he just woke up from a 3-day bender. I think everything that he does, he just deflects and he blames everybody else for the own problems that he's causing here in the state. When it comes to the prison crisis or the drug problems and everything that goes along with it, and homelessness. That's another big thing. He used, even as the mayor of San Francisco, he would ship all of his.
You remind me, because my knowledge of this gets a little foggy. When he was mayor and he was married to Kimberly Guilfoyle, he got in trouble, and he put himself in rehab of some kind. Do you remember that exactly? What kind of was that?
A little bit, but there's been so many different mayors and people in the state. It's just like the mayor of San Francisco or San Diego did the same thing. Remember, he won his he won his term. He was going against I think he was a former Marine, and all he did was slander him. And when the Marine actually confronted him, because I think the guy that was running for mayor at the time, this was maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. He confronted him. He said, "Hey, you said that I never voted." And he brought his vote stubs and he said, "I voted in every single election that I could, even if I was deployed." And that he, soon to become mayor, said, "Oh, well, and he just kind of turned his back and walked away from it.
I mean, it wasn't true.
Everything he would do correct. And everything he would do on the news, though, he would just slander and say that this Marine didn't do this, or, typical politician,
Well, it's like the creep. It's like the
and-
creep in Connecticut who claimed he served in Vietnam and didn't, and nobody cares because he's a Democrat. I mean, he claims he served in wartime and he didn't. I mean, that's a hell of a claim. That's not like claiming you were in the military.
Husband,
You think
she left him and became like
Well,
she
I
got,
like
and now
Kimberly a
she is
lot.
dating Donald Trump Jr., which I mean that tells you all you need to know. She
So
saw
he
the light
converted
finally.
her.
He converted her. He was that
it's
bad.
like St. Paul.
Yeah.
It's like St. Paul, and Jesus came and said, "Stop persecuting my people." So she came to the light,
An epiphany.
yeah, because of Dodo Bird. I mean, but isn't he like he's their big candidate for to replace Biden if he goes completely non-compos menace?
I think that they guaranteed him in 2028 that he is going to be the Democrat nominee because, as we know, the way pre-selected, right? The primary is all a show. You have these super delegates that go about, and they're the ones that make the choice. Okay, they blocked Bernie Sanders out in 2016. They weren't going to ever let him win. It had to be Hillary. She was pre-selected. And so in order to keep Gavin
Yeah,
Newsom
we
from
were-
running now, they said 2020.
We were watching, and Millie had these tapes. I got to get them for you. We were watching the demonstrations at Hillary's convention of the people who were against her, and they never showed them on television. There were significant numbers that said never vote for her. We'd even vote for Trump. These were, I think that might have helped Trump in 16.
Right. It absolutely would have, because they
Yeah.
alienated Bernie. They knew that, they were going to steal that primary from Bernie. So.
Well, we're in our soccer time now, Ted. And do you want to take over for a while?
We got Steven on the line. Steven, can you hear
Hi.
us?
Okay.
I sure can. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, Stephen.
Oh, Rudy, hey. Hey, Goomba, what's going on? I'm from Buffalo.
Lucky I don't get
I'm from
offended by
Buffalo.
stuff like that. I love doing it myself, so I'll respond in kind. You doing okay or what?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm
You
trying
doing
to
okay?
retire here in Oklahoma. Doing okay. Just
What the
okay.
heck are you in Oklahoma
You know.
for? You're like
He's a refugee.
you're like Stallone in Tulsa, the King of Tulsa. Have you seen the
Yeah,
King of Tulsa?
No.
Oh,
not
you
yet.
should watch it. It's very funny. You don't think of Stallone. Well, in a way, some of those Rocky movies had a comic element to them, right?
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, there was but this is like even more straight comedy. It's hilarious. He gets out of jail after 30 years of being in jail. I probably put him there, give him the time. And he comes back to the family and he wants a little piece of action. But they're like up against it now. They don't have much. So they just give him Tulsa. It's like they don't have anything in Tulsa. They just give him Tulsa. And he comes into Tulsa and he tries to organize it as a mafia town. And it's very funny. Very, very funny.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, check it out. King
I'll
of
check it
Tulsa.
out.
So what would you like to
Do
know?
that. He was on the. Well, when all this stuff going down about the fraud, and I kept hearing there wasn't significant evidence to show that there was fraud or
Of what? Of the election?
whatever. Yeah, and it's like, well, wait a minute. We never said significant. Why didn't I hear that? Why didn't I hear it? We never said significant. We just said there's evidence, and we want to see if there was significant evidence to overturn the check.
Well, you're
election.
right to a certain
I
extent.
didn't hear that. Why?
Well, I'm going to tell you what. First of all, there was no evidence of fraud in the election in the courts because the courts wouldn't hold a hearing. So in order to have evidence, you have to be able to call witnesses, put them on a witness stand, and have them testify. We had, for example, in Pennsylvania, we had 20 or 22 of them. Michigan, we had 40. Not a single one of them ever got to see, because the judges found reasons to throw the cases out that were highly technical, lack of standing. You didn't bring the case fast enough. I don't know how much faster you could bring it 2 weeks after the election.
Yeah.
So I concluded, and this is my conclusion as a lawyer, that there was a concerted effort to make sure that the courts didn't get their hands dirty with this. And one thing they didn't want evidence from ordinary people about fraud. It was one thing if I was saying it or Trump was saying it or some other lawyer on his behalf. They could demean us and make fun of us and accuse us of all kinds of terrible things.
None of these judges wanted anything to do with
Yeah.
this. So
But
it's,
if
they're scared.
if the lady in Detroit got up and testified that she was trained by the Democratic Party how to take phony ballots and attach them to registrations of people that were dead or had moved out of the state or weren't likely to vote, that could start to become very damaging. Because why would these ordinary people be? And then if you had accumulated them as we did, in a short period of time, you'd see a couple hundred of them doing that. We concluded that we were not going to get fair treatment in the courts. My team did. So we went to the state legislatures. And the one thing we did accomplish, although we couldn't get the election determined fairly, we accomplished making a record. So now you can go back and you can, I think they may have put on over 100 witnesses in Georgia. People say I went into vote and they had voted for me already. Well, I never voted. So that's a phony vote immediately. In the case of Pittsburgh, 17,000 people were in that position. Somebody had voted for them. What does that mean? What that means is they used the early ballots to put up phony votes and take Mary Jane Smith's registration and attach it to it, hoping Mary Jane wouldn't vote because Mary Jane had never voted before. Or in one state, they took about 65,000 registrations from the Motor Vehicle Bureau of people under the age of 18. And they registered them without reference to the age and attached them to phony ballots. Because when you see 62,000 people under the age of 18 voting, you say to yourself, it's hard to get that many people at 18 to vote. But these people didn't vote when you went and checked. Somebody voted their registration for them. Because what happens when you cheat the way they did is you're in need of lots of registrations because you got to attach the phony vote to a registration. That's what happens when dead people vote.
Right. And so one of the most difficult part about this is that there was so much going on in the year of 2020. There were so many things, like you had these secretaries of state that were illegally changing voting procedures unilaterally, right?
Particularly in Pennsylvania. That was a big thing in
I
Pennsylvania.
think Wisconsin as well. I might
Wisconsin as well. But in fact, the guy who did it is now the governor of Pennsylvania. He was rewarded. Shapiro was rewarded by being made the governor of Pennsylvania. So you wonder, what kind of a chance do we have this time? Right. Now, in Wisconsin, they changed the law. Wisconsin tightened up significantly the absentee ballot so that it's basically going to have to be
since the 2020 election.
Yeah.
And Mayor, has anything changed since the 2020 election that tells you that makes you feel that this election will be more secure?
Yes. The short answer to the question is yes. The really deeper answer is yes, but has it gone far enough? So it changed in Wisconsin. It changed in Georgia. However, the political atmosphere in Georgia and the crookedness in the Atlanta region of Georgia is significant. I mean, it's one of the most crooked Democratic cities in America. You'll also note something the press refuses to highlight, but this is circumstantial evidence of fraud. All the difficulties occurred in Democrat cities, but they're not just Democrat cities, they're crooked Democrat cities. They're cities that are controlled almost as if they're little Soviet entities by the Democrat Party. Chicago didn't have to cheat in the last election, but if it did, it could have done a great job of it.
Right.
But Chicago hasn't had a Republican mayor in 55 years. I mean, nobody's going to show up at the polling.
How's that city doing, Mr. Mayor?
It's virtually falling apart. It's falling apart, and people are being slaughtered on weekends, mostly black people.
Did you see what happened a couple of weekends ago?
Nobody cares except us.
The riots that were going on in the street a couple of weekends ago?
Yeah, the two mayors, the one going out and the one coming in, both justified.
Some kids did some things. That's what they said.
Yeah.
A few people did
Come
some
on,
things.
this kind of thing happens, $2 billion in damage and a couple of people heads cracked in. I'm not sure anybody died in that particular situation, but it was pretty close. Some very serious damage.
Several people shot, people carjacked.
Yeah. And weekends are weekend. I don't even know if they bet on it. I mean, on weekends, it's a question of, will it be, 15 murdered and 25 shot, or 5 murdered and 64 shot, or to get one with 30 or 35 murders over a weekend is not unusual.
And I do want to say the Chicago Police Department, I know several people in the Chicago Police Department. They are fantastic people, but they are choked out. They have gotten from their politicians, from their mayor especially, there's a chokehold on them. They can't do their jobs. And so therefore there's nothing they can do to fix this, because they're going to end up being fired, they'll lose their pension, or they'll even go just for doing their job.
Same thing in New York now. I mean, that was the effect of Cuomo Cuomo's laws that he passed in 2019. You know, that's something also we should know. That guy's trying to make a comeback. But these laws that have increased crime in New York dramatically, like we had the single biggest increase in murder in 1 year, 2 years ago, single biggest increase in crime last year. These are all the reasons, and Cuomo likes to run away from it. But the laws that were passed by him that basically say for about 80% of the crimes, you don't see the inside of a jail.
Right.
That you have to give the least possible sentence. You've got to virtually work very, very hard if you're ever going to hold anybody on a bail.
Are these Is it going to continue to get worse? Just in your
They
opinion?
claim these are good. I don't know what they use as their basis for it, other than they're just bald-faced lying. But they'll just say, "Well, these are good results. The system has become more just now." Well, if you define just as the criminals are on the street, yes. If you define just as, not having a significant number of innocent people killed, well, it's a pretty damn unjust system. And also the thing about it that is quite striking is that by far the main victims are black people, black young people. Nobody seems to care about their all this Black Lives Matter stuff is just pure trash. These people don't care. These people don't care about it. All they care about is once or twice a year, can they pick up an incident they can screw around with and make a lot of money by fundraising.
It's a grift.
I'm comfortable saying, Mayor,
that was a perfect. Say that again.
It was a grift, and it was proven to be a grift because the leaders of Black Lives Matter brought in all this money, and they ended up buying houses all over the world. These multi-million-dollar houses,
just
all over
like
the world.
communists do. And you should also know that the leaders of Black Lives Matter make no bones about it. They are communists.
No,
Patrice
they're open about it.
Cullors is very proud of the fact that she's a trained Marxist revolutionary. Ted, you were saying something, and I'm very disappointed you weren't on the camera more tonight. We had it all set up.
Here we are. Well, we've got.
He had to have me instead. That's awful. That's terrible.
Is there a reason?
Right here, Mayor.
Oh, there you are. Now,
That's just a lot.
show
I'm getting
him
more and more comfortable with it over time.
Right? Ted is camera shy.
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it either.
Here we are. Look at this.
You know, you don't have a
Side
face.
by side.
Fred, Ted, you're not one of these people that has like a face for just radio.
Well, that's what my
You're a
dad told
good-
me that growing up.
No, your dad was just kidding with you. You're a good-looking guy.
Here we are, Mayor. Yes, a very busy evening.
He doesn't have trouble getting girlfriends, I'll tell you that.
Mayor, of course, here we are now with we're using 3 cameras now. So our audience this evening,
I only see 2 on my.
right now, well, we'll put the third on right now.
Now, do you have a split screen for the people to see it, or
Here
is it just us that are seeing it?
everyone, so this is what the audience is seeing right now. This is what the audience is seeing.
Oh, so in the future,
This is a great shot.
because
I
we
like
have
this
these shots now, we're going to be able each night to show you something different. Because up on those walls are things that I really treasure. One is a jersey worn by Joe DiMaggio the last year he played for the Yankees. Another is a sketch of Winston Churchill that was done by his granddaughter and given to me, which is on the other side. It faces Joe DiMaggio. Then you can see my Reagan bust and what's this one over here?
Let's see what we can see here,
Of,
Mayor.
of course, we have Abraham Lincoln. We have Teddy Roosevelt. We've got another Churchill. We've got our Trumpy bear somewhere.
Here's the Joe DiMaggio jersey right here.
There you go. That's good. Yeah, you are able to show it. There's the Joe DiMaggio.
So I'm going to
jersey.
embarrass the mayor real quick, and I'll tell you, I was walking around the
Look
house
at
and I
that.
saw his Time Person of the Year or Man of the Year. Was it Man of the Year at the time?
No, it was by then it was
Person of the Year.
Now it's it. The Time it of the year.
He's got it hanging up on the wall. It's awesome. It's really cool.
Pronouns are very. I mean, people can read and write, but they have to learn pronouns.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing, 3 years old, we got to teach them that.
Ted is doing a lot of surveying of various things. But we're gonna have other
Where
things.
did you get this Abraham Lincoln bust over your right shoulder here? We'll zoom in on it here.
I think I was given that in New Hampshire for a speech that I gave in New Hampshire. And I also was given with it, and I'll find it. I'll find it for you. I was also given a lock of his hair. We're given a little thing with a lock of Abraham Lincoln's hair.
You're not kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, you aren't. You're not kidding.
I'm not kidding. I'm telling you.
How do you know it was his hair?
How do I know it was there? Because I have to assume that the Republicans who gave it to me are honest people. After all, they're not Democrats.
What do you think they did to President Lincoln's hair after he passed away? How do you think it ended up with the? How does that happen?
How does what happen?
So what did they do? How did Abraham Lincoln's hair?
Somebody cut his hair after he was.
I don't know that it was taken after he died. It could have been taken. That might have been
That
a
might have been
thing.
a thing back then. That's what I'm thinking.
There you go. Political operative
That might have been a
extraordinaire.
thing, right?
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe
Well,
they
picture
paid
me.
money. Maybe they paid money for a strand of hair, and you raised money for your campaign. But I don't know what you had to pay for then. You weren't on television. You weren't on radio. You got to pay for your horse and buggy
But that's right, right? We just remember
and
people.
a
You
couple
kept
of
hair, I don't
signs.
know.
And a couple of signs.
Abraham
Nope.
Lincoln, of course, one of the greatest presidents.
Would you be saying the greatest?
Yes, I think you could argue obviously that Abraham Lincoln is the greatest president.
You know, who I think was a very great president that doesn't get credit for being such a great president because he deserved Jefferson. When you consider the Louisiana Purchase alone, I mean, he doubled the size of our country.
That was a damn good deal. Right
and
there.
it was a
We
deal,
don't make good deals anymore. I think
and
that
it was a deal that, for very technical reasons, was legally questionable. And Jefferson was a strict constructionist, except when he saw a good deal.
Well, you think about the amount of economic benefit that just and I don't want to get too far into it, but the New Orleans, like the port of New Orleans, the Mississippi River is like the lifeblood of the United States. And, he sought that out and, made it happen. And that's why we're a superpower now.
He also did what Biden didn't do. He stopped the pirates from taking our ships. Right now, Iran has taken a tanker, that American flag tanker, and they're holding it. And who knows what they want. But where do they get the right to do that? And why haven't we done something immediately to shake them up?
I mean, it's gotten so much worse just over the past 2 years. This is what terrifies me, Mr. Mayor, is the idea that we've only been under Biden for 2 years. We're looking at de-dollarization.
Oh.
The U.S. dollar is almost, we're losing.
I thought it was 5 years.
It feels like it, doesn't
I thought it was
Oh,
Well, of course,
let me see. If you don't mind, I'd like to count how long I've been in office. Let me see. 1, 5, 2, 6, 4. I was in office 4 years.
Well, you're talking about counting. He couldn't count the amount of grandchildren he had the other day. I don't know if you saw that.
He can. He's just,
He doesn't want to
knows.
talk about that grandchild.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
It's absolutely.
That is reprehensible.
Exactly. Thank you for bringing that up, Nick. Maybe, Mayor, we close on this. Can you imagine, no matter the circumstances, one of your children has a child, and I mean, this family is not
Even if it was
exactly
with a stripper.
Yeah. I mean, this family's not exactly broke.
Right.
I mean, my
Broke.
goodness.
They got $31 million from China.
How can they do this? How can they? And they're the most public family in America, and they're willingly just putting this 4-year-old girl through this. They
So
have
why-
stockings up at the White House.
So why will they not acknowledge her as a Biden? Why? Because of the narcissism that drives through this whole thing and has created this monster in the White House, because it'll hurt his political career.
Mhm.
The same reason, and the same reason he used his addiction-prone son to take on unbelievably stressful tasks. And if you loved your son, you'd keep him out of it, and you'd go find some bum in Washington that wanted to do it. There are plenty. Boy, oh boy, could he find people that would go collect 31 million for him
Right.
around the Democratic Party in Washington. I mean, those guys are sucking around to pick up 25 grand and 50 grand by cheating. They'd have done it in a minute now, but here's the difference. You couldn't have trusted them.
Right.
So he did it for his own protection. His son, and again, because of the censorship and the lying that's done, nobody has any idea of the gravity of this except me, because I've had the thing now for 2.5, 3 years. the people he was dealing with, that his father was sending him, were some of the most dangerous people in the world, without exaggeration. Zlochevsky, who stole all of his properties for Burisma, when he came out of government, his partner, who owned 51% of Burisma, he owned only 49%, somehow 3 different times crashed into a tree going home, and the 3rd time he died. So essentially,
Big coincidence.
they were taking him out to dinner. They were getting him drunk. They put him behind the wheel of a car, and they figured if we do it enough times, we get rid of him.
Right.
So then he took over 100% of the company and cheated the wife out of her money. So that's the kind of person you have in Zlochevsky. He self-admittedly did business with the spy chief of China, who had to have killed who knows how many people. The richest man in China, who himself probably was killed, and Whitey Bulger's nephew
Whitey Bulger's nephew.
was his partner.
Wow.
So
I actually didn't know that part.
So you take a son with an addictive personality, tendency to addiction, and you put him in situations that are going to create the kind of stress where he becomes a degenerate addict with no chance of surviving, all because you want to protect number one.
Right. The big guy.
I know mafia guys wouldn't do that. I have more respect for them than I do for this piece of whatever he is in the White House.
Yeah.
What a shame. So Ted, what do we got?
Mayor,
This
we're well
week,
into
I want people to know that this week we're going to have Kirk Elliott on at the right time, and he's going to give you a really good idea of how to protect yourself during this a terrible transition where paper money, who knows what's going to happen with paper money. And therefore he'll show you how you can make the transition to silver and to gold. And you can make it like, let's say you have an IRA. I'm going to put a value on it. Let's say it's $3 million. So you could take like a portion of that without any penalty. You could take like, let's say a third of it and put it in gold and silver. Or I think he would recommend silver now, but I'm not sure. I'm not the expert. That's why we're going to have Kirk come on and describe it in more detail than he gets to do when he does the commercial. Also, I think later in the week, we'll have Dr. Maria on, because there have been a lot of developments on the medical side, both with regard to all of the phony COVID stuff that was going on, but also things they're currently doing, like holding up a medicine that might have a really big impact on early detection of cancer. And now when you look at the FTC and the FDA, and you got to start looking for political motives, because they're filled with political motives. Since Fauci won't tell us his royalties over the last 3 to 4 years, until he tells us the royalties, we have to assume the worst, that Fauci was in this for the money. I mean, the guy made a fortune. I know you say he was the highest paid employee, but he got royalties. I bet you didn't know that. He got royalties from private companies.
Even the Israelis, I think, gave him $1 million. It was like an award that he won or something like that. You know.
So let's say he's got royalties from those vaccine companies. Maybe that's the reason he pushed so hard, kept treatments away, and got so many people killed. Guy's a real piece of work, I'll tell you. So Ted, what kind of parting words do you have for us? You've been very silent today because you've been juggling new technology. Which
very well juggling,
which I really enjoy. I really have to say, all kidding aside, because I was teasing you a lot. I think it adds something to the show.
I certainly agree, Mayor. And it was great it's great to have these new cameras in place. We can add more depth to the show. Of course, new dynamics. We can have a full table with up to really unlimited number of cameras. We may want to cap it at 4 or 5, but we're excited. And so bear with us as we continue to make these additions. We're thankful to have Nick with us. Nick has been a citizen journalist now for a number of months. And
and
he has survived.
Well, Nick, you intend to continue this?
I do. I think this is it. I've given everything up.
Well, anything we can do to help you, I'm going to tell you why.
Appreciate it, sir.
There is a iron curtain of censorship in this country, meaning some of the things we talked about tonight, we could not talk about
right
on MSNBC, CNN. Who knows? YouTube may take us off
Mhm.
for some of the things we said. I don't even know what. Sometimes I don't even know what it is. Just obvious things, but they don't want anything to cast doubt on the legitimacy of what is in fact a thoroughly illegitimate president.
Well, Mr. Mayor, like when we met up in East Palestine, Ohio, and that was my first big story was East Palestine, Ohio. We met up there, and the things that we uncovered while we were there, just even tweeting about it would have gotten us banned before. I wouldn't even be able to be on Twitter at this point because the government lies we were able to expose. But these social media platforms, Twitter, like pre-Elon Musk, everything the government said must have been true.
And it
There
turns
was
out
no,
a good percentage of it wasn't true.
it wasn't true. I mean, no, we were able
Like
to prove it.
the mask thing,
Yeah.
the vaccine is not a vaccine.
Right.
It's a
But we
treatment.
went and you saw it. We threw a rock in the water in East Palestine. We saw it turned into a rainbow, the rainbow sheen that came up out of the water. That video has been seen over 80 million times now. That is why the federal government ended up coming in finally and doing something about it. But I don't want to forget about them because, as soon as it's out of the media, the federal government's going to go away and they're going to be left, hung up to dry. So,
Well, this is work that needs to be done. There are not enough people like Nick, largely because our major publications and whatever you want to call them, newspapers, television stations, radio stations, cable networks, are under the domination of the government. They're part of the regime. They write what Biden tells them to write. They don't cover what will be harmful to Biden, and they exaggerate anything having to do with Republicans, either making it up completely or exaggerating it way beyond what's going on in order to keep power with the left-wing government. And a lot of it has to do because they were trained in almost from grammar school with the influence of the UFT and then the colleges. They were basically brainwashed as communists. Well, it's a shame.
it's sad.
So the way I describe it is, it's like a big wall, and all that information is behind that wall that they need, right? And it's our job, you as a citizen journalist,
Break
me,
down that wall.
right? That's the group. That's what Tucker Carlson was doing.
Mhm.
He's one of our casualties. Tucker Carlson was telling people things that Fox didn't want them to hear,
Precisely.
because Fox is part of that wall of censorship. I never thought it was such a big part of it, but it really is. I mean, you can't talk about the stolen election.
Mhm.
Why can't you talk about the stolen election? They talked about Hillary's stolen election forever.
Right. She talked about it for 4 years.
And whether we're right or wrong, why can't we talk about it? And they say, "Oh, it's going to cause a riot." Well, that isn't what caused what happened on the 6th. And who knows if it was even a riot? It certainly wasn't an insurrection. And it looks to me like Antifa, if you were to look at the text that they suppress, had a lot to do with that.
Right. Yeah. They still won't tell anything about us as to who actually incited that. We saw that.
And it's crooked because the censorship is so great.
Right.
They don't
Right.
want anything coming
Well,
out.
so the weekend after Ray Epps decides he's going to come out and talk finally, what happens to Tucker Carlson the next day? So,
And that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, his reporting on January 6th.
Mhm.
I think. Well, we'll see. There's a lot to cover. Love to get Tucker on. We're going to try.
Yes, we
there you
will.
go.
We're going to try. We're going to try really, really hard to get him on. We don't know what legal constraints he's operating under. There may be a period of time where he can't comment. I don't know. I do want to offer him gratuitous legal advice. Some of those legal restraints may not be constitutional in the situation that we're in, which is a national emergency going on. So I don't know how long you have to live with them. If it's a short period of time, it doesn't matter. But if it isn't, maybe you might want to consider getting those obligations voided as against public policy. Just a thought. We'll be back tomorrow. Today was May Day, which used to be always a Communist Party holiday. Since almost all those communist parties have gone broke and killed so many of their people, you can't even recognize them anymore. There isn't much of a celebration for May Day any longer, except among woke American college students who have been brainwashed, and their professors who are really pathetic. But communism has killed more people than any ideology that, at least since recorded human history. It's just in China alone, it's at 80 million. So we'll be back tomorrow. Don't forget, 3 o'clock tomorrow, wabcradio.com. And then back here tomorrow night at 8. And we will have plenty. We will have plenty to talk about and plenty of things to bring you from behind that iron curtain and bring it out to the light of day, so you, the American people, can know what's happening, including, the condition of your president. Thank you. God bless you, Nick.
Pleasure, sir.
Good luck.
Always a
I
pleasure.
think you're a hero for choosing what you've chosen. Given the courage that I saw that you had in New Palestine, you're going to be very successful.
Thank you, sir. It means a lot coming from you. Really appreciate it.
We're going to watch this guy very, very closely, because maybe a bunch of you want to start doing the same thing, and we can.
I encourage you to.
Because we don't have a lot of honest people in the press. I mean, they remind me like of Nazi prison guards or something. They know it's wrong and they just go along with it. So, good night. God bless you. And of course, God bless America.